Hi, welcome to the garden tour of 2021. So I redid this bed. I had a lot of little gold hostas in here, Golden Scepter, which are part of the Tiara clan. And they actually just crowded this all out and it didn't really look that good anymore. And I had a home to move them, which I'll show at the end of the video. So I did put a few different plants in here. Well, this was just done a couple days ago, so by next year hopefully everything grows in and looks good. So the gold hosta in the center is Hosta on stage, which is a very, very late one to actually emerge from the ground. It's always my last hosta. In front of that is a smaller cultivar called Aristocrat, and next to that is probably one of the darkest green hostas, Lakeside Black Satin. Kind of a neat plant, and it's very hard to get a hold of these days. And beside that is a little tiny piece of a Brunera that wasn't doing all that good, so I moved it here. Hopefully it thrives. This is one I've had for a while, and it's been moved around a few times, but it's Hosta Marilyn Monroe. It has a really neat white back to the leaf, and the petioles are sort of a frosted red, and the leaf also has really nice fluting on the edge. A little piece of painted fern that I stuck in there, and we'll see how that does. It's been doing pretty good, but sometimes when you move a plant from where it's doing well, it doesn't always thrive. Of course, this is the Blue Angel. It's been very hot and dry here this spring, so we're already starting to see a little bit of burn on some of the leaves, even though I've tried to be pretty diligent with watering, but these things happen. Over in the little corner garden here, some Maui Buttercups at Cut Leaf Ligularia, and in the top part of the garden here there's a Lakeside Babyface, Rainbow's End, and Lemontini. The fire and ice that's kind of struggling, but it's a pretty difficult one to grow. And some Pandora's Box, which is a great little mini. I actually split the clump last year, so there's lots of little plants in there, and they seem to have come back pretty good. And a little curly onion, which is kind of a neat little foreground plant that provides some good contrast to the hostas and sort of leaf form and whatnot. And beside that we have a little grouping of blue mouse ears, and the yellow one there in the center is a very small piece, a bit of a reclamation project of Hosta Piedmont Gold. And this little guy here is a weedling that popped up underneath my Dancing Queen Hosta. I have a feeling it's an open pollinated seedling of Dancing Queen. I'm going to assume the pollen parent was probably this big Ciboldiana behind it. So we'll see how that actually turns out when it gets a little bit bigger. It might be a neat plant, or it might be an ugly plant. I don't know yet. So the Blue Angel is still big and still thriving. It's, got a little bit more expanding to do. It is early June. It wouldn't reach its maximum size for probably another couple of weeks, but it's getting probably around it's about 5 foot across right now, but it'll expand by another foot and really be actually touching the trunk of the tree behind it. So underneath my cut leaf Japanese maple here, we have Hosta Lakeside Paisley print, which I really like. It's got some really good characteristics to it. I like the center variegation, and I also like the ruffled edge on it as well. And in the early spring, this is one of the best yellows if you can find it. It's Lakeside Sorry, not Lakeside, it's called Peach Salsa. The only problem is it's a viridescent plant, so it will have a tendency to get greener as the season progresses. And this is Hosta Neptune. This is actually a really nice plant. It's very vigorous and it is relatively easy to find. An old standard behind it is Paradigm. This is a great cultivar. It's got great quilting on the leaf, and it also has a nice color. It gets better and better as the summer progresses. It'll be, the center of the leaves is kind of a light green now, but in another 3 weeks it'll be a nice bright yellow. So it's actually a very, very standout plant in the garden. And the big one behind that is an old cultivar, Nancy Gill. Very hard to find that plant nowadays, and it's a hybrid of Sum and Substance mixed with a Hosta pycnophila. So it has great cupping. It's a neat color, and the white backs on the leaf are pretty neat too. There's a Hosta Empress Woo. It's not high on my list as a great plant, but it does get big, although this one is maybe not sited perfectly and it's taking its sweet time. So the bigger one in the center here is Hosta Goodness Gracious. It is one of my favorite cultivars. Later in the season, that chartreuse color you see on the edge of the leaf will actually be bright gold color. And in front of that is Lakeside Chacha. And this one's a pretty exotic plant. It's really grown on me over the years. It's emerald rough cut, and it has a nice gold center with a ruffled edge and a dark green border on the leaf. So it is actually a very, very exotic hosta. It's tough to find, but if you find one, pick it up. It's a neat plant. In front of that, a piece of Hosta First Frost, which is part of the Halcyon family. So it would include other plants in that same grouping. This is Hosta Touch of Class, and another piece of the Lakeside Black Satin. This is just a small piece of Hosta Smash Hit, which is a sport of orange marmalade with a much wider green margin on it. Hopefully this turns into a nice plant soon. And Praying Hands, Rainforest Sunrise, and then a Hack'n'Cloa grass, and one I put in last year. This was the last hosta that I've actually purchased, put it in last year. It's a really neat plant. This is Bridal Falls, which is a edge variegated sport of Niagara Falls. And it's, in a few weeks, the leaves will be, wherever it's bright green, the leaves will be a nice bright white, and it is quite an exotic looking plant when it gets big. Behind that there is the first hosta I ever bought. So this clump is about 15 years old, and it is Sum and Substance, which is easy to find and a great plant. Just big leathery leaves on it, slug resistant, and very vigorous grower. And behind that is my Sage. Again, if you see one, it does take a while, but it is a very, very exotic looking great hosta. So as we move along here, this is Hosta Atlantis. Again, this is another plant I highly recommend. If you find it, by all means buy it. It grows really fast, very vigorous, can take a variety of conditions, and it is a super exotic looking plant. And in behind that, struggling a bit because as the trees are growing around the garden here, they're actually starting to cut off a lot of light. And this is Hosta Gentle Giant. I'm probably going to be moving that one next year so I can put it into a spot where I can, enjoy it a little bit more. And I'll probably replace it with another piece of this Ligularia here. I think this is Desdemona. Ligularia desdemona. It has some cutworm damage on the leaf, but it's very vigorous. It gets big, and I think put a couple back in there and it'll just sort of fill in that whole back of the garden. So as we move back, there is the blue hosta in the front is another great one if you can find it. Hosta Awakening Angel. It's vigorous, doesn't get too big, and it's a great blue color, and the blue lasts a fair bit of time on that. And next to it is Hosta Coldheart. And again, if you can find a Hosta Coldheart, by all means get it. It's super vigorous. This camera on this phone actually enriches the color a bit, so what I'm looking at with my eye, it looks different than what I'm seeing on the screen. So the color is more like a lime green popsicle when it comes out in the spring, and it'll be lutenescent, so it will actually brighten to a bit more of a gold color. And some old standard tiger lilies, which grow anywhere. They will flower even in a fair bit of shade, and they make a great companion plant to go with the hostas because they provide a very different look in terms of leaf shape and growth habits. So they do break up the sometimes bit monotony of all big leaf plants. So just a quick tour back here so you can get an idea of how the whole garden comes together. So as we move back in, a couple of small clumps of risky business with the white centers. The streaked hosta in front here is called Christmas Tree Gala, and it is the unstable form of Hosta Christmas Tree. I actually scooped this at a Canadian Tire last year, and it was a great find because typically these streaked hostas go anywhere from 60 to $100 per division, and I picked up like a 4-division plant for $6 on sale because they didn't really know what they had, nor did they care. Behind that is Hosta I Declare, which is a great hosta earlier in the spring. It is one of the most yellow plants you'll see in the garden. The only problem is new growth, and as the season progresses, the leaves all turn to sort of a lime green, so it does lose its yellow. And some spiderwort behind there, and then in behind that is an old variety, which most of the large hostas have some genetics in. This is a Hosta Ciboldiana. It's a great blue. It's very inexpensive, and it's very easy to find. Front there's a Jack Frost Bernera. I can't remember the name of that little foreground plant there, but it's got nice variegated leaves and little yellow flowers. And in behind that is Dancing Queen. It's a beautiful plant early in the spring, but it just goes solid green, and it's already pretty much green now, but it looks beautiful when it emerges. It is a very, very bright yellow, but it does fade to green very quickly. As such, if you're looking for a yellow hosta, even though, in the spring when you're looking at the pots and the plants, you will be disappointed as the season and the plant ages. It's an okay cultivar. There are much, much better yellows out there. And beside that, this is another one of my favorites. This is Hosta El Nino. And as the plant gets mature, the white margins get much wider, and you start to see some streaking into the leaf. So it's another great plant. It's part of the Halcyon family, and this is sort of the original plant that a lot of these plants came from, and this is the original Halcyon. One of the best blues. Doesn't get too huge, and it will actually grow in a wide variety of conditions. So as we go back, relatively new one I put in a couple years ago. This is Cathedral Windows, which is just on the right hand side. In the center we have American Sweetheart, and it's a little dirty looking right now, but one of the best greens you can buy is Hosta Irish Luck. It's very vigorous. It's a very bright glossy green leaf, and it has a little bit of fluting on the edge. So if you have like some blue hostas or some yellow hostas and you put that in the center, it does a real show. Big Daddy, which is neither big nor anyone's daddy, but it is a nice corrugated, slightly cupped blue hosta that keeps its blue for quite a while. Summer Breeze, another great specimen plant, very, very vigorous, and great color on it. Next to that is Old Glory. Again, another great plant, very vigorous. Good grower, doesn't get too humongous. But again, something I'd recommend, as is Luna Moth. I just moved this one this year. It was starting to get choked out by tree roots where it was. So hopefully it enjoys its new home here a little bit more. And as we go across here, I actually can't remember the name of this cultivar, but I bought it a while ago and it's kind of languishing where it was. So I've moved it and hope that it does a little bit better. Another one of my absolute favorites, if you can find it, is Hosta Cuyahoga. It has a great round leaf. It's very exotic looking. It is glacially slow to grow. And in front of that there is Tijuana Brass, Lakeside Spruce Goose. Behind that is Lakeside Shoremaster. I bought a 1 division plant last year. It seems to be coming in quite well. And behind that is a plant I just moved this year. This is World Cup. And as we pan across this section of the garden, the soil's terrible. I think I've said that before in other videos. So all that really grows here is sedums. And this is a blue sea holly. So in a few weeks, that whole plant will be an electric blue color. It's actually pretty cool. And then some irises, just your standard light purple iris. They're super vigorous. It's not fancy, but the flowers are still nice. And some more rough stuff. I really have to work. I've been very busy with work this season, so I actually haven't done as much work in the garden as I would like. So it's still a work in progress. Cedars. Another garden that's a bit rough right now. I'll put some work into it over the next couple days and fix that up, but it's basically all little dwarf sedums, or sedums that stay dwarfed because the soil is like concrete in this garden. So the one thing I did do this year, the sort of major project that I've done this year in the garden, was reinvigorating this one under the cherry tree. This is a tangle of tree roots under here, and a lot of the hostas that I put in here were very, very stunted. So one I found, so I've tried to keep it with very, very durable plants in here. One group of hostas that'll actually do good in kind of the dry shade with a lot of tree root competition are the hostas in the Tierra clan. So there is, I think this is Golden Tierra or Grand Tierra, I can't remember which. Sort of the mass of these light green, yellowish hostas that you see everywhere are Golden Scepter, which are part of the Tierra clan. And this little one here I got last year, this is a Diamond Tierra. So it's a nice edge variegated cultivar. This one's kind of neat too. It's a called Deliverance. It seems to be very hardy. It's hung in here in this garden for a long time, and I'm just going to leave it because I have to put something there. And the Hukuros don't mind this garden too much. They're more about drainage than water. They can take it quite dry, but they don't want to keep wet feet. And with the mass of cherry tree roots in here, this garden dries out very quickly. So they actually do okay. This one's a little wilted because I just moved it here a couple days ago, and it's going to take a little bit to settle in. So I've just tried to sort of make this a mass of colors. I think it's turned out all right. And if we look down the garden as you come in to the yard, provides a nice first look. And with the dense planting of these hostas, hopefully it'll keep the weeds down, because there was a lot of weeds in here. So in behind there, this is Royal Standard. It's very, very tough. This one's this bluish greenish one here is Pearl Lake. Some Lancifolias. This one is Fragrant Bouquet, and it's and Cross Regals. These should be giants by now, but they're just hanging in, and I don't really have anywhere else to put them, so they'll have to tough it out for a few more years till I can dig a new bed or two. And then in behind, in that pot there, I'll put a fern or something, or maybe some caladium or something that can take some shade. And then some of these are just some native plants. There's a false Solomon seal, and I can't remember the name of that one. I think it's Mayapple, and then some columbines. Over here, this is my Hosta Farm, where I'll put cuttings and splittings, and I'll leave them in here for a while. And I actually sell a few of them on Kijiji. For any American listeners, it would be the equivalent of Craigslist. And I can actually offset the cost of my hobby by selling these online. So every year it gets split and I sell them. These are some of the ones that I've potted up. And then in the corner here, this is kind of a real shade part. This just never gets much sun. So there's a little piece of Seducer, an old variety Elizabeth Campbell, another piece of Coldheart, a Niagara Falls, Fragrant Blue, and this is Pineapple Upside Down Cake. And as we walk along, there's the wood pile. And then this is into the new garden that I actually cut last year. So I had to move Seducer. It was in the other garden before, but it was getting too big. So I moved it here in the corner. So hopefully this will all fill out. In behind that, we have a young Sun Power and a Satisfaction. A red heuchera, sedums, and some fancy daylilies. These were all, this one was from a local hybridizer. It's called Hayfield Shutterbug. Puts out the most unbelievably fluorescent, massive orange flowers on it. It really stands out in the garden. And a Montana. And behind that we have some Delphinium, some Asiatic lilies. This is a big Jade Cascade Hosta. It's a true giant. It will get much, much bigger than that. And the big purple flowers are basically the giant allium. And it's a great spring bulb. Within 3 weeks, there will be no evidence that those plants ever existed. They just fade away like a tulip, although they last a little bit longer. A few ligularias. This is a spider lily. And a few more assorted hostas. I'll try and do a video when these are all flowering. So this is a called a Candy Crush. What is the type of flower again? My name escapes me.